Nigeria House Davos 2026.
In today's panels, or today's agenda, we will be focusing on the creative economy and the cultural export as it concerns Nigeria and Africa as a whole. To help us do that today, I would like to bring on stage our moderator for this morning's event, Mrs. Ezinne Nwazulu. She is a strategic business leader with over 13 years of cross-sector expertise in energy, finance, and digital innovation across Africa and Europe. As Director of Corporate Services, she plays an oversight function to provide strategic leadership across corporate communications and strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage today our moderator of today's session, Mrs. Ezinne Nwazulu.
Okay.
And our guest today is no other but himself, His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Ladies and gentlemen, please, with a warm welcome, let us invite His Excellency on stage.
I had an event last December, and it was really last minute. It was, I think it was a week to the event or something, and I reached out to his team for him to, because we promote intra-African trade and the AFCFTA implementation from Nigeria. And please, if the media would help me play that quick video while, we use that to introduce His Excellency, that would be great.
Gentlemen, it is my pleasure to deliver this keynote address at the 234 Mentor Matchup Challenge 7.0. Theme, Building Bridges for Equitable Trade. Although I'm not able to join you in person, I am nonetheless grateful for the opportunity to update you on the AFCFTA Digital Trade Protocol and underscore how African entrepreneurship can benefit from this technological instrument. Negotiations on all the legal instruments are complete. The focus is now on implementation of the protocol. Africa's digital economy is expected to be at $712 billion by the year 2050. Underpinned by the protocol on digital trade, I believe this is a significant market that will ensure inclusivity, particularly of SMEs. Digitization of trade is an important priority. Digitizing trade will enable efficient and affordable trade across our continent. Under the AFCFTA, businesses can form cross-border partnerships, participate in regional supply networks, and leverage on innovation hubs in their region. I therefore call upon you to consider the AFCFTA to be your partner in the digitization of Africa's economy. I wish all of you very good deliberations over the next few days. I thank you for your attention.
So the AFCFTA is often described as Africa's most ambitious integration project. Why was it important to make digital trade a core pillar of the agreement now, rather than waiting for physical trade to fully mature first? Because we all know that there are so many bottlenecks with, Pan-African integration. And which sectors do you think will feel the impact of the AFCFTA implementation?
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here finally in Nigeria House. I missed a very nice party last night and the night before. So I am envious for those who were able to make it. The IFC, as we said in the video, estimates that by the year 2050, Africa's combined digital economy will be over $700 billion. That's a very significant market. And the drivers of that market, it is the creative industry, fintechs, young entrepreneurs. These are the real drivers of Africa's technological economy. And so it was very, very important that we establish a regulatory framework that will create those opportunities and ensure that they actually become a reality. Young people in Africa have been at the cutting edge, as I say all the time, have been at the cutting edge of digital innovation, but without the regulatory framework that is required to support them to be successful contributors to Africa's digital economy. The second aspect is really, it troubles me all the time. All of us were watching football. Most likely, those who were streaming the matches were streaming those matches from platforms outside of Africa, in Europe or Seattle, wherever. And the revenue that is generated doesn't come to us. So if we develop the capability as Africa to invest in platforms that will enable us to generate the revenue, and the revenue remains in Africa, this is the game-changing tool that we need to enable us to benefit from our own creative industries and the technology that is there to support the creative industry of our continent. Nigeria alone, 2024, contributed over $100 billion in terms of the creative industry to the overall global creative industries economy, which is transmitted through digital platforms. Where is the revenue going to? So I think that we have a very, very significant challenge in dismantling, and that's really the word, to dismantle the economic structure that existed, the digital economic structure that existed for decades, that takes, as Africans, our knowledge, our expertise, takes us elsewhere, and from that value chain, we derive a very, very small amount. That's why this protocol on digital trade is so important. And that is why I'm very happy that my dear sister, Minister Dr. Odu Wale, is the digital trade champion because she has the leadership that we need to help us to move this forward. And I congratulate Nigeria for being the first country to ratify the protocol on digital trade. So I think that
deserves a round of applause.
So I think that we are really, with this protocol on digital trade, we are really onto a very, very important aspect of Africa's economy.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you another question in 3 parts. So the first is, I want to understand how the AFCFTA is engaging Nigeria's tech ecosystem, because you mentioned something about a lot of, the streaming platforms and the technologies that we're using are actually, from outside of the continent. And we know that Nigeria has a thriving tech ecosystem. So do you have plans? And if you do, how are you implementing them as, co-creators towards, building the technology that also works with the digital protocol that you're creating?
Well, our job is to establish the regulatory framework to enable fintechs to scale, to enable them to reach new markets in Africa, to deploy their technology for development of our continent. The second aspect is this: Nigeria is the largest exporter of financial services in Africa. The largest exporter by far of financial services. We have to have the appropriate regulatory framework for that to happen successfully across the continent.
UBA, for example, Access Bank, Zenith Bank. These are all leading banks that provide financial services across the continent, including a very, very important aspect of Africa's digital economy, and that is mobile payments. The ability to, for those who are not part of the banking system, to still be able to be economically active by being able to make payments on their mobile phones. The reason the protocol is so important is because it establishes the right of any fintech, of any financial services provider to make those payments, or to indeed establish the infrastructure. If you have the capital, you are Bank X, and you have the capital to invest and build in payments infrastructure, the protocol enables you to do that. So I believe that of all of the instruments that we have that are the legal foundation of the AFCFTA, this is truly one of the most transformative because it's forward-looking, it captures Africa's economy, it is inclusive, and it places our continent at the cutting edge of technological advancement.
Okay. So you talked about payments, and I understand that the AFCFTA is working very closely with PAPS, and PAPS being a game changer for reducing reliance on foreign currencies. So now, as more central banks integrate, what are the next steps to ensure that the payment efficiency actually triggers a surge in trade finance for SMEs who still lack collateral to scale?
We have seen over the last 2 to 3 years since PAPS has been operational, we've seen reductions, up to 90% reductions on the cost of transfers, the cost of trade. It deeply troubles me that we have to rely on the dollar as Africans. What has the dollar got to do with us? I've never understood that. What has the dollar got to do with us Africans trading amongst ourselves? So the ability to trade in local currency goes to the heart of the sovereignty that we all have been talking about. The last region in Africa to be free is Southern Africa. A country that I come from, South Africa, 1994. All of us have been free for decades. But when it comes to the essence of sovereignty, we are still relying on others. And so I commend Professor Oramah for the vision and liberating our continent from this burden politically, but also financially, it is a drain to Africa's economy. You mentioned SMEs. If you are a small medium enterprise in Lagos, and your ambition is to scale and export to Kenya, the cost of currency convertibility is a barrier to you to reaching that market in Kenya. So now, if you can trade with your counterpart in Kenya using Nigerian naira, they receive Kenyan shillings. You cut out Uncle Sam completely. What is that? You cut him out completely, and you simply deal with your counterpart directly. So this is really a very important part of inclusion of SMEs in the broader implementation of the AFCFTA. It's not actually, the AFCFTA is not about the nuts and bolts of trade, the trade rules. It really is about enabling young people, entrepreneurs, SMEs to scale and to reach new markets. Who cares what the protocol says? They will never read it. And they shouldn't. Our job should be to make sure that we implement the protocol in a way in which they never have to read it, so that they have, the infrastructure is there for the trade to happen. And whether we use trade speak, trade language, it shouldn't matter. The fact is, we must we must achieve, as Africa, that projection, not only in terms of GDP, because people don't eat GDP, but we must achieve that $712 billion digital economy in real terms, in what people see. Why should we stream football, African football, using platforms in Seattle? It's absurd. So let's build these platforms in our continent, invest in data centers that will enable us to stream football in Africa. And the revenues come 100% to Africa. And we must not be apologetic about that. We must assert our ambitions without any apology.
So my second to the last question, because I know we're running out of time. How does the protocol support digital creators, so creators across music, film, gaming, digital content? How can the protocol support them to trade seamlessly across borders and also collaborate? Because right now, with access to the internet, there are just so many ways to collaborate and export culture, because culture is now an economy, right? And that's what we're looking to do, to tell our own stories and to support these creators to earn meaningfully, right? So like we use some of these foreign-owned platforms, and these creators are limited in how much they're able to earn due to the region that they're operating from on YouTube. I'm not going to go into that detail. So how does that, how is the protocol going to support digital creators to make more money and compete with their contemporaries in other parts of the world?
It establishes the infrastructure for all of that you've described to happen in Africa cost effectively. The transmission, for example, of content, the transmission of content on these platforms is enabled by data centers. The storage of the data in a confidential manner, that's in the protocol. The movement of the data from country to country, that's in the protocol. The payment, when you receive the content electronically, the payment is enabled by the protocol. So it really establishes a regulatory framework for all of these things to happen in Africa. Of course, as the AfCFTA, we don't have the capital to invest in the technological infrastructure, and we shouldn't. But we do know that there are institutions in Africa that have the capital to invest in that infrastructure. I'll give you an example, and then I'll end on this note. In July last year, Africa 50 fully financed the very first data center in Mozambique, the very first one. And what that means is that the creative industry in Mozambique, the banking sector in Mozambique, has an opportunity, and other sectors that benefit from the digital economy, they now have an opportunity to completely own the digital economy of Mozambique. And if we can do that across the African continent through investments in establishing the infrastructure for the digital economy, then we enable the creative industry to benefit. And they don't have to know that Orama, Wamkele Mene, Alan, these are the people that were driving the investment and the establishment of the infrastructure. No, they simply should know that it is there to be taken advantage of and to trade the data across the borders of our continent.
Well, we sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. We honor that, sir. Thank you very much. Please, we will stand for a quick photograph, for a quick official photograph.